I'm Emma, 32 female. I live in a quiet suburban town, in a small but cozy house I bought with my own savings. As a pharmacist, my life is structured and methodical, a stark contrast to the chaos that was about to unfold. I always believed that family was the one constant you could rely on, a safe harbor in any storm. But I was about to learn that sometimes, the biggest storms are the ones that brew within your own home, threatening to tear everything apart. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The planning for Hannah's baby shower had consumed my life for the better part of 2 months. My younger sister, a lifestyle blogger with a flair for the dramatic and an obsession with aesthetics, had envisioned an event that was less a casual get-together and more a production worthy of a magazine cover. As the older sister and designated planner, I was tasked with bringing her Pinterest-fueled dreams to life. Every detail, from the custom monogrammed napkins to the ridiculously expensive, imported flowers, was scrutinized under Hannah's exacting eye. She wanted perfection, and I was determined to give it to her. After all, this was a celebration of new life, a joyous occasion for our family, or so I thought. The day of the shower was a picture of flawless execution. The backyard of our parents' home, where we'd grown up, had been transformed into a whimsical garden paradise. Pastel-colored balloons arched over a beautifully set dessert table, and a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the old oak tree, its branches providing dappled shade for the 30 or so guests. My parents, Megan and Jack, beamed with pride, flitting between guests and topping up glasses of champagne. My dad, a financial advisor who usually carried a serious demeanor, was uncharacteristically jovial, telling stories about Hannah's childhood to anyone who would listen. My mom, a homemaker who thrived on these kinds of family events, was in her element, ensuring everyone felt welcome. I had spent the morning triple-checking every last detail. The caterers were on schedule, the gift table was artfully arranged, and the custom-made cake, a multi-tiered confection of vanilla bean and raspberry cream, sat as the centerpiece of the dessert spread. I had even prepared a special non-alcoholic punch for Hannah, a vibrant pink concoction of fresh fruit juices and sparkling water that I knew she loved. I poured it into a large, elegant glass dispenser, placing it prominently on the main table so she could easily access it throughout the afternoon. I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Everything was perfect. My cousin, Thea, arrived early to help with the final touches. A sharp and observant lawyer, Thea had always been my closest confidant. She surveyed the scene with an appreciative smile. "Emma, you've outdone yourself," she said, squeezing my arm. "This is incredible. Hannah's going to love it." "I hope so," I replied, my voice betraying a hint of exhaustion. "You know how she is about details." "She's lucky to have you," Thea said, her tone softening. "I know she hasn't always made it easy." That was an understatement. Hannah and I had always had a complicated relationship. I was the responsible, quiet one. She was the charismatic, attention-seeking one. Growing up, it felt like we were constantly competing for our parents' approval. I excelled academically, while Hannah charmed her way through life. Our parents, particularly our mother, seemed to be perpetually enchanted by Hannah's sparkle, often overlooking her more self-centered tendencies. While they loved me, I often felt like I was living in Hannah's shadow. Still, she was my sister, and the news of her pregnancy had felt like a chance for a fresh start for all of us. When Hannah arrived, she made a grand entrance, as expected. Dressed in a flowing white lace dress that accentuated her baby bump, she looked radiant. Her husband, Tom, followed in her wake, carrying a mountain of gifts. She surveyed the scene, her eyes scanning every detail. For a moment, I held my breath, waiting for her critique. But then a wide smile broke across her face. "Oh, Emmy, it's perfect," she exclaimed, rushing over to hug me. "It's everything I wanted and more." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The tension I had been carrying for weeks seemed to melt away. "I'm so glad you like it," I said, hugging her back. The party was in full swing. Laughter and conversation filled the air as guests mingled, played silly baby shower games, and enjoyed the food. I made sure Hannah was comfortable, bringing her a plate of her favorite snacks and a glass of the special punch I had made for her. She took a sip and her eyes lit up. "This is delicious, Emma. What's in it?" "Just a mix of strawberry, raspberry, and a little bit of lime," I explained, "all fresh." She patted my hand. "You always know what I like." As the afternoon wore on, it was time for the main event, opening the gifts. Hannah sat in a specially decorated chair, a throne of wicker and flowers, looking every bit the queen of the day. The gifts were lavish: designer baby clothes, a high-tech stroller, and enough toys to fill a nursery. With each gift, Hannah's smile seemed to grow wider. My parents stood behind her, their faces glowing with pride. I watched from the sidelines, feeling a genuine sense of happiness for my sister. Maybe this was it, I thought. Maybe this baby would finally bring us closer, healing the old rifts that had existed between us for so long. My gift was one of the last ones. I had put a lot of thought into it. Knowing Hannah's love for personalized items, I had commissioned a local artist to create a custom-painted chest for the nursery, adorned with whimsical animals and the baby's name, which they had already chosen, Lily. It was a heartfelt, one-of-a-kind piece, something that couldn't be bought in a store. When Hannah unwrapped it, she gasped. "Emma, it's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes welling up with tears. She stood up and pulled me into another hug, this one tight and sincere. "Thank you, I love it." In that moment, all the stress and expense of the past 2 months felt worth it. We were just two sisters, celebrating a new beginning. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a feeling of hope for our future. The party was a resounding success, a perfect day that I believed would become a cherished family memory. I had no idea that in just a few short hours, this perfect memory would be shattered, replaced by a nightmare of accusation and betrayal that would change our family forever. The foundation of trust I thought we were rebuilding was about to crumble into dust, and the person holding the hammer was the very sister I had worked so hard to please. The seeds of a meticulously crafted lie were already taking root, and I was blissfully unaware that I was about to be cast as the villain in a drama I didn't even know I was a part of. The golden afternoon light was beginning to fade, casting long shadows across the lawn. The party was winding down, and a pleasant, relaxed atmosphere had settled over the remaining guests. Most of the presents had been opened, the cake had been cut, and people were chatting in small, contented groups. I was clearing away some empty plates from a table when I saw Hannah stand up, a strange expression on her face. She was holding her stomach and swaying slightly. Tom, her husband, was instantly at her side. "Honey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I don't feel well," Hannah mumbled, her face suddenly pale. She pressed a hand to her forehead. "I feel really dizzy, and my stomach, it hurts." A murmur of concern rippled through the guests. My mom rushed over, her face a mask of worry. "What is it, sweetie? Do you need to sit down?" "Something's wrong," Hannah said, her voice growing louder and more panicked. She took a few unsteady steps before lurching towards the dessert table, her eyes wide with what looked like terror. She pointed a trembling finger at the glass punch dispenser, the punch I had made for her. "The punch," she gasped, her voice cracking. "It was the punch. I felt fine until I drank it." A confused silence fell over the yard. Everyone turned to look at the punch dispenser, then at me. I felt a cold knot of dread form in my stomach. "What are you talking about, Hannah?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's just fruit juice." She whipped her head around to face me, and the look in her eyes was one I had never seen before, a mixture of fear, pain, and raw accusation. "You poisoned me," she shrieked, the words tearing through the quiet air like a siren. "You put something in my drink. You're trying to hurt my baby." The accusation was so outlandish, so utterly insane that for a moment I could only stare at her, speechless. The air was sucked out of my lungs. Poison? Was she serious? Guests exchanged shocked, uncomfortable glances. My father, Jack, stepped forward, his expression bewildered. "Hannah, calm down. What are you saying? Why would Emma do something like that?" "Because she's jealous?" Hannah screamed, tears now streaming down her face. She was fully committed to the performance, her body trembling with manufactured outrage. She's always been jealous of me. She couldn't stand that I was the one getting all the attention, that I was the one having a baby. She wanted to ruin my day. She tried to poison me. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I looked around at the faces of my family and friends, searching for a flicker of disbelief, a sign that they knew this was impossible. But all I saw was confusion, shock, and a dawning horror. My mother, Megan, rushed to Hannah's side, wrapping a protective arm around her. She didn't look at me, she looked at Hannah, her face etched with maternal terror. "My baby, my poor baby," my mom cooed, stroking Hannah's hair. She then turned her gaze on me and her eyes were cold. "Emma, what did you do?" The question felt like a physical blow, not what's going on, or this is a misunderstanding. It was a question of guilt. "Mom, I didn't do anything," I pleaded, my voice shaking. "I would never, ever hurt Hannah or the baby, you know that. All I know is my pregnant daughter is in pain after drinking something you made for her," my father said, his voice grim. He had moved to stand beside my mother and sister, forming a united front. The three of them stood there, a tableau of accusation, with me on the outside. Thea, my cousin, quickly came to my side, her legal instincts kicking in. "This is ridiculous," she said firmly, addressing the crowd as much as my parents. "Hannah, you might be feeling unwell for any number of reasons. To jump to such a serious and defamatory accusation is completely out of line." But Hannah was inconsolable, collapsing into a heap of sobs in our mother's arms. "She's always hated me," she wailed. "She smiled all day, pretending to be happy for me, but she was planning this all along." The scene was pure chaos. Tom was on the phone, presumably calling for medical help, while the remaining guests began to quietly pack up their things, their faces a mixture of pity and suspicion. They didn't want to be involved in this ugly family implosion. Each person who avoided my gaze, who offered a weak, tight-lipped smile as they scurried away, felt like another nail in my coffin. I felt trapped in a nightmare. My own family, the people who were supposed to know me best, were looking at me as if I were a monster. The beautiful party I had poured my heart into had become the scene of a crime, and I was the sole suspect. The perfect day had curdled into something toxic and ugly. "I can't believe this," I whispered, looking at my parents. "You really think I would do this?" My father's jaw was tight. "We need to make sure Hannah is okay, Emma. That's our priority right now." He refused to meet my eyes. His words were a clear dismissal, a choice. He had chosen his side. My mother's betrayal was even more direct. As she helped a sobbing Hannah towards the house, she paused and looked back at me, her face a storm of anger and fear. "How could you, Emma, after everything we've done for you, to do this to your own sister on a day like this? You're filled with a poison I don't understand." Her words cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't just an accusation, it was a condemnation of my entire character. In that moment, I realized that the narrative had been set. Hannah, the victim; Emma, the jealous, spiteful sister. The truth didn't seem to matter. Hannah's tears and my mother's fear were more powerful than a lifetime of me being a loving, dependable daughter and sister. As I stood alone in the wreckage of the party, surrounded by pastel balloons that now seemed to mock me, I felt a profound sense of isolation. Thea put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, Emma," she said in a low, determined voice. "She's not going to get away with this. We'll figure out what's really going on." But as I watched my parents fawn over my sister, their backs turned to me completely, I knew this was more than a simple lie. It was a calculated act of destruction, aimed directly at me, and it had worked perfectly. I had been tried and convicted in the court of my own family, without a shred of evidence. The betrayal was absolute, a gaping wound that I knew would not easily heal. Hannah had not only poisoned their minds against me, but she had also poisoned my entire world. The days following the baby shower were a blur of suffocating silence and digital ostracism. My parents weren't speaking to me. My frantic calls went straight to voicemail, and my texts were left unanswered, sitting starkly under the word "delivered." a testament to their deliberate refusal to engage. The only update I got was a curt, clinical text from my father 2 days after the incident. Hannah is fine. The doctors said it was a severe case of Braxton Hicks contractions, likely brought on by stress. We are asking you to give her space. The message was a cold, calculated slap in the face. It wasn't an apology or even a retraction of the horrific accusation. They acknowledged a medical explanation for Hannah's distress, but offered no relief from the verdict they had passed on me. The implication was clear. I was the source of her stress. I was still the villain. The social fallout was just as swift and brutal. Hannah, a master of online narrative, had wasted no time. While she didn't post a direct accusation, no doubt her husband, Tom, or a lawyer had advised against such a libelous claim. She cultivated an aura of a brave, surviving mother-to-be. She posted a photo of herself in a hospital bed, looking pale and fragile, a caption about a terrifying health scare and the importance of removing toxic people from her life, no matter who they were. The comments section was a cesspool of sympathy for her and thinly veiled condemnation for the unnamed toxic person. Friends of the family, and even some of my own acquaintances, left comments like, "So sorry you went through this, Hannah. You and the baby are all that matters, and good for you for protecting your peace." Each comment was a small, public endorsement of her lie. I was being erased, painted as a monster in the vague but powerful language of social media wellness. I felt like I was drowning. My reputation, my relationships, my very identity as a good person were being systematically dismantled. I spent 2 days in a state of numb disbelief, replaying the scene in my head over and over. Why would Hannah do this? What had I done to deserve such a cruel and destructive lie? The jealousy motive she'd screamed felt so flimsy, so ridiculously cliché. There had to be something more. It was Thea who pulled me out of my despair. She came over on the third night, armed with a bottle of wine and a lawyer's steely resolve. "Okay, enough moping," she said, setting her briefcase on my coffee table. "We're not going to let her win. Crying about it won't change the narrative. Evidence will." "What evidence, Thea?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "It's her word against mine, and everyone has already chosen her side." "People chose her side because she put on a better show," Thea countered, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "But performances have flaws, lies have holes, we just need to find them. Let's go back to the party. Think about every detail. What was Hannah's behavior like before her episode?" I closed my eyes, forcing myself to push past the pain and think logically, like the pharmacist I was. I replayed the afternoon. Hannah's grand entrance, her initial delight, the way she mingled with guests, the gifts, the punch. She seemed fine, I recalled slowly. Happy, even. She loved the decorations, she loved the gifts, she drank the punch and even told me how delicious it was. She had 2 glasses, I think. She was perfectly fine for at least an hour after that. Thea's eyes lit up. "An hour? Emma, if there were something genuinely harmful in that punch, a fast-acting substance, the reaction would likely have been much quicker. An hour is a long time." "Exactly," I said, feeling the first spark of fight ignite within me. "And the doctors said it was Braxton Hicks. It had nothing to do with what she ate or drank." "Okay, so the medical side clears you," Thea said, pacing in my living room. "But that doesn't undo the character assassination. We need something that proves not just your innocence, but her malice. We need to prove she lied. Deliberately." We spent the next hour brainstorming, deconstructing the day. We talked about the guest list, the caterers, the timeline of events. And then, it hit me. An almost forgotten detail that suddenly seemed monumentally important. "The cameras," I whispered, my eyes widening. Thea stopped pacing. "What cameras?" "My dad," I said, speaking faster as the memory solidified. "For his 60th birthday last year, I bought him a set of high-end, motion-activated security cameras. He's become obsessed with home security. He installed them all around the property, one overlooking the front door, one on the garage, and 2 in the backyard. One is mounted on the corner of the house, and the other is discreetly placed in the large oak tree to get a full view of the yard and patio. Thea's expression shifted from concentration to intense excitement. "Emma, are you serious? The entire party was recorded." Yes, he was so proud of them. He even showed me the app on his phone that day, how clear the picture was. The cameras would have captured everything. The whole afternoon. Every conversation, every interaction, Hannah's collapse. A triumphant smile spread across Thea's face. "This is it," she said, her voice electric with possibility. "This is the inconvenient truth. A silent, objective witness that can't be manipulated by tears or accusations. Her entire performance, recorded from two different angles." The hope that surged through me was so powerful it almost made me dizzy. The footage would show everything. It would show me serving Hannah the punch. It would show her drinking it and being perfectly fine. It would show her laughing and opening gifts for an hour afterward. Most importantly, it might show what happened in the moments before her manufactured breakdown. It could be the key to exposing her lie and clearing my name. But then a new wave of anxiety washed over me. But how do we get the footage? Dad controls the system. He would never give it to me now. He's on her side. If he even looks at it, he'll see it through her lens. He'll find a way to interpret it against me. Thea held up a hand. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, we need to know if the footage still exists. These systems usually record on a loop, overwriting after a certain period. How long does your dad's system store recordings?" "I think he paid for the premium cloud storage plan," I said, remembering his pride in the feature. "I think it holds recordings for 30 days. 30 days, Thea repeated, a plan already forming in her eyes. "That gives us time. We don't need to ask him for it. We need to get it without him realizing its significance." The discovery of the cameras changed everything. It was no longer just a matter of my word against hers. There was a third party in this dispute, a digital, unbiased observer that held the absolute truth of what happened that day. For the first time since Hannah's shriek had shattered my world, I felt a flicker of power. She had built her story on a foundation of lies, designed to be believed in the emotional chaos of the moment. But she had forgotten about the silent eyes in the sky, the ones that watched and recorded without bias or emotion. The truth was out there, saved on a server, waiting, and I was going to get it. The game had changed. This was no longer about defense. It was about an offense, and I finally had the weapon I needed to launch my counterattack. The knowledge of the cameras was a lifeline, but it came with its own set of challenges. Gaining access to the footage was the new, critical mission. Thea, with her legal mind, immediately laid out the strategy. A direct confrontation was out of the question. My father, firmly entrenched in Camp Hannah, would either refuse my request or, worse, delete the footage himself, claiming it was irrelevant. We needed a different approach, one that relied on subtlety and a bit of digital sleight of hand. The plan hinged on my dad's predictable habits and his slight lack of technological savvy. He loved his new security system, but primarily interacted with it through the app on his phone. The main hub, the computer where the primary account was managed and where cloud footage could be downloaded in high resolution, was in his home office. I knew his password. It was a combination of my mother's birthday and the name of his first dog, a piece of information I doubted he'd ever think to change. "The key is to get into the house when no one is there," Thea strategized over the phone a few days later. "We need a window of opportunity." "Do you know their schedule?" I did. My parents had a standing bridge game with their neighbors every Thursday evening, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. They never missed it. It was the perfect 3-hour window. Thea and I planned our operation for the following Thursday with the precision of a military strike. The objective: get in, download the footage from the day of the party from both backyard cameras, and get out without leaving a trace. As Thursday approached, my nerves were frayed. I felt like a burglar casing my own childhood home. This whole situation felt surreal and deeply wrong. I shouldn't have to sneak into my parents' house to prove I didn't commit a crime I was accused of by my own sister. But this was the reality Hannah had created. That evening, Thea and I parked down the street and waited. At 7:05 p.m., we watched my parents' car pull out of the driveway and head down the road. We gave them another 10 minutes to be safe. Then, with my heart pounding in my chest, I used the spare key I still had, the one they had forgotten to ask for back, to let us into the house. The silence inside was heavy with memories and unspoken accusations. Every family photo on the wall seemed to mock me. We went straight to my father's office. Just as I'd predicted, the computer was on and the password worked. I felt a pang of guilt violating his privacy, but the need to uncover the truth quickly overshadowed it. Thea, more tech-savvy than I, took the lead, navigating to the security system's web portal. We found the archive and located the date of the baby shower. There were hours of footage, neatly filed in 1-hour blocks from each camera. We started the download for the relevant timeframe, from noon to 6 p.m., from both the camera on the house and the one in the tree. The files were large, and the download was agonizingly slow. Every minute that ticked by felt like an hour. While the files were transferring to a portable hard drive, I started skimming through the footage on the screen, my curiosity getting the better of me. The first few hours showed exactly what I remembered. Guests arriving, people mingling, me working hard to make sure everything was perfect. I watched myself serve Hannah the punch. I watched her drink it, smile, and tell me she loved it. I watched her open my gift and hug me, tears in her eyes. It was all there, a painful reminder of the happy day that had been stolen from me. Then Thea pointed to the screen. "Wait, go back, look there." She was pointing at the timestamp, about 15 minutes before Hannah's dramatic collapse. The camera mounted in the tree gave a wider, clearer view of the main table where the punch dispenser was. In the footage, Hannah was standing near the table with 2 of her friends. I was on the other side of the yard, talking to an aunt. Hannah's back was mostly to the camera, but her actions were clear. While her friends were distracted, she quickly reached into her purse, pulled out a small bottle or vial, and shielding her hand with her body, she unscrewed the cap of the punch dispenser and appeared to pour something in. It was a swift, subtle movement. Anyone watching in real time would have easily missed it, but on camera, paused and replayed, it was undeniable. My breath hitched. What is she doing? "I don't know," Thea said, her voice grim, "but it looks like she's adding an ingredient of her own. Let's keep watching." We fast-forwarded. A few minutes later, another guest, an older family friend named Mrs. Gable, went to the table to refill her glass from the dispenser. We watched as she took a small sip and then made a face, a grimace of distaste. She subtly put the glass down on the table and walked away, picking up a bottle of water instead. "She contaminated the punch," I whispered, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying certainty. "But why? What did she put in it?" Thea's eyes narrowed. "She's a lifestyle blogger, right? Obsessed with health and wellness." "Completely," I said. "She's always promoting some new supplement or cleanse." "I remember a few months ago she was pushing something on her blog," Thea said, pulling out her phone and furiously typing. "A super-concentrated magnesium citrate supplement. It's used as a laxative for colonoscopies. In a high dose, it can cause severe stomach cramping, dizziness, and even temporary episodes of Braxton Hicks in pregnant women due to dehydration and electrolyte imbalance." She found the blog post and showed it to me. There it was, a picture of Hannah holding a small bottle of a clear liquid, extolling its cleansing virtues. The bottle looked identical to the one she had discreetly pulled from her purse in the video. The sheer, cold-blooded premeditation of it all washed over me. This wasn't a spontaneous, emotional outburst. This was a calculated plot. She had intentionally spiked the punch with a substance she knew would cause alarming but ultimately harmless symptoms. She had created a medical emergency to frame me. She had planned to accuse me of poisoning her all along. The motive wasn't just simple jealousy. It was a desperate, pathological need for attention and drama, a desire to be the tragic heroine at the center of a story, even if it meant destroying her own sister to create it. She had turned her own baby shower into a stage for the ultimate betrayal. The download finished. We had it all. The footage of her contaminating the punch, The footage of another guest reacting negatively to the taste, the footage of her feigned collapse, the digital trail was complete. We quickly and quietly left the house, the hard drive containing the truth feeling heavy in my purse. As we drove away, the anger I felt was a pure, cold flame. This was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. My sister was more than just selfish and dramatic. She was cruel and manipulative on a level I had never comprehended. "What do we do now?" I asked Thea, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and vindication. Thea looked over at me, her expression resolute. "Now," she said, "we don't just clear your name, we make sure they can never deny what she did. We plan a confrontation, but not a private one. We need an audience. We need to set a stage of our own." The investigation was over, and the path forward was crystal clear. It was time to stop playing defense and start planning the final act. The hard drive sat on my kitchen counter for 2 days, a small black rectangle of potential energy. It contained the truth, a digital bomb capable of blowing up my family's carefully constructed narrative of my guilt. But as Thea had rightly pointed out, simply possessing the truth wasn't enough. How we deployed it was everything. Sending the video in an email or a text would be too easy for them to dismiss, deny, or spin. They could claim it was doctored or taken out of context. A private confrontation would dissolve into a screaming match, with Hannah playing the victim again. No, this required a more public forum, a moment so undeniable it would leave them with no escape. We need to create a situation where they are forced to watch it, in front of witnesses, Thea advised during our next strategy session. We need to strip away their ability to control the narrative. The perfect opportunity presented itself in an unexpected invitation. My father, likely prompted by my mother's desire to maintain some semblance of family unity, sent me a stiffly worded text. "We are having a family dinner on Sunday to discuss everything. We expect you to be there. 6 p.m. It was a summons, not an invitation. They intended to corner me, to likely pressure me into a forced, insincere apology to appease Hannah and smooth things over. They thought they were setting a trap for me. They had no idea I was about to walk in with a trap of my own. "This is it," I told Thea. "This is our stage." The plan was simple in its concept, but required meticulous preparation. Thea would come with me, acting as my legal support and a neutral third-party witness. The centerpiece of our plan was my parents' large-screen smart TV in the living room, the very room where these family discussions always took place. The challenge was getting the video file queued up without them knowing. I spent Saturday afternoon editing the footage into a concise, damning timeline. I started with a clip of me happily preparing the punch. I followed it with the clip of Hannah telling me how delicious it was. Then came the key evidence, a zoomed-in, slow-motion replay of Hannah taking the vial from her purse and spiking the punch. I included the clip of Mrs. Gable tasting the punch and recoiling. Finally, I added the footage of Hannah's dramatic fake collapse, juxtaposed with a clip from an hour earlier where she was laughing and opening gifts, looking perfectly healthy. I added simple, clear titles. 2:15 p.m., Hannah enjoys the punch. 3:30 p.m., Hannah adds an unknown substance. 3:35 p.m., another guest reacts to the taste. 4:30 p.m., the accusation. The final video was just under 5 minutes long, a powerful, silent film of her deceit. The final piece of the puzzle was the delivery method. On Sunday afternoon, hours before the dinner, I drove to my parents' house. I knew they would be at church. Using my key one last time, I slipped inside. My heart was pounding, not with fear this time, but with a cold, focused resolve. I went to the living room, turned on the smart TV, and using its web browser, I navigated to a private cloud storage link where I had uploaded the video file. I left the page open, a single click away from playing. Then, I turned the TV off. The browser would remain on that page, waiting. It was a digital landmine. When Thea and I arrived at 6 p.m. sharp, the atmosphere was thick with tension. My parents, Megan and Jack, greeted us at the door with strained, formal expressions. Hannah was already there, perched on the sofa, looking smug. She had positioned herself as the wronged party, graciously allowing the sinner back into the fold for judgment. She didn't even look at me. "Emma, Thea," my father said, his voice clipped. "Thank you for coming. Please sit down." We sat in the armchairs opposite the sofa, creating a clear divide in the room. My mother wrung her hands, avoiding eye contact. "We thought it was time we all talked, as a family," she began, her voice wavering. "This has been difficult for all of us, especially for Hannah." Hannah placed a protective hand on her belly. "Difficult is one word for it," she said, her voice dripping with melodrama. "I'm just trying to stay calm for the baby's sake, but I think I deserve an explanation, Emma, and an apology." I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time since the party. There was no flicker of guilt in her eyes, only a supreme confidence in her own deception. She truly believed she was going to get away with it. "An apology," I repeated, my voice steady and calm, which seemed to unnerve them. They had expected tears, pleading, or anger. They weren't prepared for composure. "Yes, an apology," my father interjected, his tone hardening. "You put this family through a tremendous amount of stress. You terrified your sister. Whatever issues of jealousy you have, you need to own up to them so we can move past this." This was my cue. I took a deep breath. "You're right," I said, and I saw a flicker of triumph in Hannah's eyes. "We should talk about what happened. In fact, I think it's best if we just see what happened. It's often easier to understand things when you can watch them unfold." Before they could react, I reached into my purse and pulled out the small, universal remote I had brought. It was already synced to their TV. I pointed it at the screen and pressed the power button. The TV flickered to life, the screen immediately showing the web browser, paused on the video file I had prepared. "What is this?" my father demanded, confusion clouding his face. "I believe you installed a new security system recently, Dad," I said, my voice ringing with a newfound clarity and strength. "You always said it was for catching the truth. Let's see what truth it caught." And with that, I pressed play. The room fell silent, the only sound being the faint, ambient noise from the video playing on the 65-inch screen. My parents and Hannah stared, their expressions shifting from confusion to bewilderment as the first clips played. They saw me at the party, smiling. They saw Hannah hugging me. "What is the point of this, Emma?" my father started to say, but his voice trailed off as the next scene began. The video shifted to the zoomed-in, slow-motion footage from the tree camera. The image was crystal clear. Hannah, standing by the punch bowl, glancing around furtively, her hand dipping into her purse, the small, unmistakable bottle, the quick, deliberate act of pouring its contents into the dispenser. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Hannah's face, which had been a mask of smug righteousness, instantly crumbled. The color drained from her cheeks, replaced by a ghastly, mottled white. She looked like a cornered animal. That's not," she stammered, her eyes darting between the screen and our faces, searching for an escape that wasn't there. The video continued, relentless and unforgiving. The clip of Mrs. Gable tasting the punch and making a face of disgust played next. Then, the final sequence. Hannah, an hour after spiking the drink, laughing and looking perfectly healthy, followed immediately by the footage of her dramatic, theatrical collapse and her finger pointing at the punch bowl as she shrieked my name. When the 5-minute video ended, the screen went black, but the images hung in the air, vivid and damning. The silence that followed was heavier and more profound than any I had ever experienced. It was the silence of irrefutable truth crashing down, shattering a fortress of lies. My mother was the first to break. She slowly turned her head to look at Hannah, her expression one of dawning horror and disbelief. "Hannah," she whispered, the name a question mark of pain. "What did you do?" Hannah's composure completely shattered. She began to tremble, her eyes wide with panic. "It's fake. She faked it. Emma is trying to frame me. She edited it. Her voice dissolved into hysterical sobs, but her denials were weak, pathetic, and utterly unconvincing. The evidence was too clear. My father, a man who prided himself on logic and reason, simply stared at the blank screen, his face ashen. He looked as if the foundations of his world had cracked. He had built his judgment on the word of one daughter, and now he was faced with undeniable proof of her monstrous deception. He slowly rose to his feet, walked over to the TV, and turned it off, as if making the image disappear could erase the truth it had revealed. He turned to face Hannah, and his voice, when it came, was low and trembling with a rage I had never heard from him before. "Explain this," he said, his word a command, not a request. "Explain what we just saw." I don't know," Hannah cried. "She's trying to ruin my life." Thea chose this moment to speak, her voice calm, clear, and authoritative. "What you saw," she said, addressing my parents directly, "is unaltered footage from your own security system, downloaded on Thursday evening. The substance Hannah added to the punch is a highly concentrated magnesium citrate supplement, one she has promoted on her blog. In high doses, it induces the exact symptoms she claimed to have: stomach cramping, dizziness, and stress-induced Braxton Hicks. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a premeditated act designed to publicly humiliate and defame Emma. Every word Thea spoke was a hammer blow, dismantling the last remnants of Hannah's lie. My mother started to weep quietly, her hands covering her face. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the daughter she had blindly defended, seeing her for what she truly was. I finally spoke, my voice devoid of the pleading and desperation they had heard from me before. It was cold, hard, and final. "You asked for an apology, Hannah," I said, looking directly into my sister's tear-filled eyes. "But it seems you're the one who owes one, not just to me, but to everyone you lied to the friends and family you manipulated, to the child you used as a prop in your sick little play." I stood up, Thea rising with me. The power dynamic in the room had irrevocably shifted. I was no longer the accused, pleading for my family to believe me. I was the one in control, the bearer of a truth so potent it had brought them to their knees. My father finally turned his gaze to me. His eyes were filled with a profound and terrible shame. "Emma," he began, his voice cracking, we are so sorry." His apology, when it came, felt hollow, like a bandage on a gaping wound. My mother echoed him, her words muffled by her sobs. "We should have trusted you. We should have known. Forgive us." They were begging now, begging for the forgiveness they had refused to even consider giving me. They looked at me with pleading eyes, hoping to salvage the wreckage of our family. But the damage was too deep, the betrayal too absolute. I looked from my parents, shattered faces, to my sister's pathetic, sobbing form. There was no triumph in this moment, only a deep, aching sadness for what our family had become. They hadn't believed in my character, in the daughter and sister they had known for 32 years. They had believed a lie because it was more dramatic, more exciting, and because it affirmed their lifelong narrative of Hannah as the center of the universe. They had failed me in the most fundamental way. "I heard you," I said quietly, my words directed at all three of them. "I heard everything you said about me. I saw everything you posted, and I saw how quickly you were willing to throw me away. Sorry doesn't fix that." With that, Thea and I turned and walked towards the door. There was nothing left to say. The truth had been unveiled. The confrontation was over. As I walked out of the house, leaving them in the silent, suffocating aftermath of their own making, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. Free from the weight of their judgment, free from the burden of their expectations, and free from the toxic bonds of a family that had proven they were not my safe harbor, but the storm itself. Leaving my parents' house that night felt like closing the final chapter of a book I no longer wanted to read. The immediate aftermath was a deafening silence. For 3 days, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts. I imagined the atmosphere in that house must be toxic, thick with recriminations and the unbearable weight of what they had all done, Hannah through her actions, and my parents through their complicity. The first crack in the silence came from an unexpected source. A week after the confrontation, I received a long, rambling email from my father. It was a pathetic attempt at an explanation, filled with excuses and self-pity. He wrote about the panic of seeing Hannah in distress, the parental instinct to protect the more vulnerable child, and the deep, profound regret he now felt. He said my mother was devastated, unable to even speak about it without breaking down. He ended the email with a desperate plea. "We made a terrible mistake, Emma. We chose the wrong side. Please tell us what we can do to fix this. Our family is broken, and you are the only one who can put the pieces back together." The email infuriated me. He was still, even now, trying to place the burden of reconciliation on my shoulders. I was the one who had to fix the family that they had so willingly broken. I showed the email to Thea. "He doesn't get it," I said. "He thinks this is something that can be fixed with an apology and a few tears. He doesn't understand that the trust is gone. You can't just glue that back together." Thea advised me not to respond, to let them sit with the consequences of their actions. I took her advice. The social fallout for Hannah was swift and brutal, a perfect mirror of what she had tried to do to me. While I never released the video publicly, the truth began to seep out. Thea, in her capacity as my legal counsel, had sent a formal letter to a few of the guests who had been most vocal in their online condemnation of me. The letter didn't threaten a lawsuit, but simply stated that irrefutable evidence has come to light proving Emma's complete innocence and exposing the true nature of the events at the baby shower. It was a carefully worded warning shot, and it worked. Whispers started to spread. People who had been quick to judge me suddenly grew quiet. Hannah's online presence faltered. Her posts about her health scare were quietly deleted. Her comment sections, once filled with sycophantic praise, were now dotted with questions she couldn't answer. Her brand, built on a foundation of curated authenticity, was crumbling. Her followers began to drift away, sensing the insincerity that now clung to her like a shroud. The influencer who had tried to manipulate a real-life narrative lost control of her online one. About a month later, Hannah gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Lily. My mother sent me a text with a picture of the baby. It was a beautiful photo, but I felt a profound detachment. This child, who should have been my niece, a source of joy and family connection, was now inextricably linked to the worst betrayal of my life. The real begging began after Lily was born. My parents started calling, leaving long, tearful voicemails. They wanted me to meet the baby. They talked about new beginnings, about letting bygones be bygones for the sake of the family. They showed up at my house unannounced one Saturday, standing on my doorstep looking old and defeated. "Emma, please," my mother wept. "We miss you. We were wrong, so terribly wrong. Don't let your sister's mistake destroy all of us." "It wasn't just her mistake, Mom," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. I refused to let them pin everything on Hannah. "You had a choice. You could have stood back, asked questions, and waited for the truth. You could have given your other daughter the benefit of the doubt. But you didn't. You chose to believe the worst of me instantly. That was your mistake." I didn't let them in. I told them I needed time, a lot of time. The truth was, I didn't know if I could ever go back. The family I had believed in, the one that was supposed to be my anchor, had proven to be an illusion. The most shocking development came from Hannah herself. A few months after the birth, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Her handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. It was a long, rambling confession, a desperate outpouring of the jealousy and insecurity that had fueled her actions. She admitted she had been envious of my stable career and my quiet confidence. She confessed that her life as an influencer felt hollow, and that she had manufactured the baby shower drama to create a story that would make her feel important, to make her the center of a grand, emotional narrative. "I wanted everyone to see me as a strong, brave victim," she wrote. "And I was willing to make you the villain to get it. I am so sorry, Emma. I am broken, and I broke everything around me." I read the letter and felt not anger, but a profound pity for her. She was a deeply unhappy person, and her actions were the symptoms of a much deeper sickness. But pity is not the same as forgiveness. I have not seen my family since that day in the living room. I am building a new life, one based on chosen family, friends like Thea who have shown me what true loyalty looks like. The pain of the betrayal is still there, a dull ache that surfaces from time to time, but it no longer defines me. I am healing. My parents continue to reach out, sending gifts and letters, harvesting the bitter crop of their regret. They are learning the hard way that trust, once shattered, is not so easily rebuilt. Hannah is in therapy, trying to piece her life back together, away from the validation of a screen. Whether our family will ever truly recover is a question I cannot answer. Some things, once broken, can never be made whole again. They can only be remembered for what they were and what they taught you. And I learned the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the people you would take a bullet for are the ones behind the trigger.